Good morning, my name is Julia, and today I'm reading from Genesis 1, chapter 26 and 27. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image and after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over the livestock and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Julia, for reading that for us so nicely. Well, as I said, we're doing ultimate knowledge at the minute, looking at some big questions. And our big question today is, how significant are human beings? We're talking about the significance of human life. And that is an interesting question in many ways. I think if you went and asked most people, they would very quickly and very happily tell you, of course, human life, of course, human beings are significant. It doesn't need a moment's thought. And yet, if you look at the world around us, I think you'd be forgiven if one of your big takeaways was actually mankind's blind indifference to man. Every day, 25,000 people die of hunger, a solvable problem. It's estimated to take about £200 billion to solve. For comparison, that's the cost of the Trident nuclear missile system. How significant are the lives of those starving people? We don't seem to be doing anything about it. Roughly every minute, 2 people die in conflict around the world. 2 people a minute. Not a number that's decreasing. Human beings killing human beings. Are their lives significant? A couple of years ago, we witnessed the Me Too movement, particularly starting in Hollywood. But what it showed was a history in almost every industry and area of women being abused and assaulted. How significant are those women's human lives? According to the government's website, there were 207,384 abortions in England and Wales last year. That's in 2019. And when you get an abortion, the grounds for abortion are put down into different categories, grounds A through to G. And ground E is the child would have had a physical or mental disability, and so they were terminated. And that accounts for over 3,000 terminations, because they would have been born handicapped. How significant are those human lives? Now, I realise I've said the A word, and some of you may have got very, very tense very, very quickly. This is not a sermon about abortion and what conditions it is or is not okay in. You can relax again, we're not going to go there. But if we are talking about the significance of human lives, it needs mentioning alongside other examples of where you don't see people seeing that significance. If you would like to talk about abortion, you can come and ask me what I think. It's probably more nuanced than I've made it seem so far, but in general, abortion, bad. There's this year's Black Lives Movement, a movement that's come about because of a long history of people not seeing the significance of black human lives, a history of slavery and oppression. People making the point that black people are no less significant than white or anyone else. We could go on and talk about asylum seekers trying to cross the channel, or the way some elderly in our communities are disregarded and abandoned, preyed on by scam artists. Or we could talk about the history of child abuse, even within church communities. Is human life significant? Should we care about these things? That's sort of the global view, the kind of big picture area we'll be working in this morning. But there is also a personal level to all of this. Am I significant? Do I matter? Because I reckon we all sometimes feel like that's not true at times. We all have those times where we feel insignificant, pointless, like we're nothing. Those, have I made a difference? Would anyone notice if I wasn't here kind of moments? If human life is significant, that means that I am significant. And that means that you, whoever and wherever you are significant. So let's see what the Bible has to say about all this together now. And we start where Julia read for us in Genesis 1, back at the creation of people. And here is what God said. So we're in chapter 1, verse 26. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And in verse 27, so God created man in his own image. And in there, we see the line that makes human beings significant. We were made in God's image. It's a simple sentence, and there's millions of pages have had ink splashed on them explaining it. It's a big concept with many implications. On this, John Piper, the American preacher, said this: "Historically, people have said to be made in God's image is our morality, our sense of right and wrong, our rationality, our ability to reason, our spirituality, our ability to relate to God, our aesthetic sense. You don't find many monkeys creating Mona Lisas. Our judicial sense, the whole legal system, a sense of right and wrong and justice and injustice." And I think, frankly, all those things are true and aspects of what it means to be in God's image. And then in his book, A Holy Ambition, Piper goes on to point out something that I think is most helpful for our purposes. And that is simply that image is image. If we are created in the image of God, we are created to image God. On the way into church, on the left, there is a display of pictures of the staff team and the PCC of the church. These are our images. They're there to image us, to show people, so that people will know if they're in church and have something they need to say to the church, who they can go to. If you go down to the Hoe in Plymouth, there is a 12-foot's much bigger than that. There is a 12-foot statue of Sir Francis Drake. It's there to image him, to image Sir Francis Drake, so that when people see it, they'll think of him and think of his circumnavigation of the globe. It's sort of a celebration of Francis Drake. Humans are made in the image of God. We are made to show God, unlike all other animals. And that makes us, all of us, no matter race or gender or age or whatever, it makes all of us significant, because we are all little images of God. We are images of God, and that makes us significant. So if we're feeling down or low, if we're feeling insignificant, in those times, what comfort it might bring to remember that we really are significant. We are images of the Most High God, here to show God to the world. Through what we do, through how we interact and communicate, through our passions and our joys, through the stuff that makes us weep. All of that images our God and reflects him to the world. And that is you. And that's what you do. You aren't insignificant. You are the image of God. And what could be more significant than that? I once heard somewhere that it is illegal to deface an image of the Queen. And I had a bit of a search on the internet. I can't find any proof of this, so it may not be true. And I can certainly think of examples where it's not been punished. But the idea goes that it's illegal because what you do to the image of the Queen, you do to the Queen yourself. And therefore it becomes kind of treasonous. And we see that kind of idea in some very public examples in recent history. Remember what happened to the statue of Saddam Hussein in 2003 in the Iraq War. The same with Colonel Gaddafi's statue in 2011. People attacked those statues as a way to attack the person they imaged. Edward Colston in Bristol comes to mind. What they did to the statue, they did to the person, at least mentally. We are made to be in the image of God, all of us. What we do to each other, how we treat each other, or more particularly how we mistreat each other, is how we treat God's image. So when we read people saying that we should send the Navy to bomb and sink refugees trying to come to the country on their little dinghies, we need to remember that people in those dinghies are God's images. When children are left to starve whilst we do nothing, those children are God's images, made in the image of God. When people say something we can't possibly agree with, maybe something hateful or ignorant or offensive, the people that said that, they are also made in the image of God. Even racists are significant. Everyone is made in the image of God. And so all human life, all human beings are significant. But it's not just how we're made that makes us significant, but the very way God treats us bestows significance upon us. Or to simplify that sentence, I'm significant because God treats me as significant. Let me put it this way. My wife, Kyla, is really significant to me. There's a reason, the sort of colloquialism for someone we're closely romantically linked to is significant other. It's the person that is especially significant to us. And so I try in the way I act to treat her as significant to me. How successful I am at that, you'll have to ask her, but that's the aim. That she would know that she's significant to me by how I treat her. Now, one of the things you need to know about me is that I am not God. Made in God's image, but not God. Just because I find someone significant, that doesn't automatically make it true. I think the works of Stan Lee are significant in many, many ways. But when I tell you he's mostly known for writing comic books, you may well choose to disagree. I could be wrong, who knows? However, if God treats something as significant, that comes with a much higher seal of approval than if I do. If God treats something as significant, then we can know that it is indeed significant. That just comes with the infallibility of God. I may well be wrong, God never is. And God has shown time and again how significant he thinks human beings are. Whether that's by giving rules on how people should treat each other. I think of the second half of the Ten Commandments, the chapters of laws in Exodus and Leviticus. God is saying there that people are significant, that here are rules to stop you guys abusing each other and stuff. By giving us all the good things we have, God is showing our significance. By comforting us, 2 Corinthians 1:4 tells us, God comforts us in all our affliction. Not something you do for people who aren't significant. In John 15, verse 15, Jesus says, no longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father I've made known to you. Friends. Friends with the Son of God bestows significance upon us. All of which is skating around the big one. God came to earth and died for us, willingly. The God who created everything chose to suffer and die in our place. And that makes us significant. What could make us more so? Human beings are massively significant because God treats them as such. So how significant are human beings? Massively so. And that has implications on an inward trajectory, how I treat myself, and also on an outward trajectory, how I treat others, those around me. So, starting inwardly, how I treat myself. I need to know that I am significant, and so I should treat myself accordingly. When things aren't going well, and you're feeling all, I'm rubbish at everything, and completely useless, and can't do anything right, turn to God and see what he thinks of you. He loves you. He cares for you. He doesn't think you're useless or rubbish. He thinks you're amazing. He thinks you're amazing enough that he's given you the world. He thinks you are worth dying for. And outwardly, looking at those around us, whether it's our close friends or the other parents on the school run, the homeless guy sleeping in the underpass, the young people that have been climbing on roofs at Springfield Road, the people holding us up in traffic on Lyra Bridge, and the people who service at Morrison's, or the guy that knocks on your door trying to sell you windows. They are all of them significant, even the window seller. They are all of them made in the image of God. They are loved by God, and so we need to treat them as such. I started this morning with a whole lot of ways and examples of people being treated as if they are insignificant. What I mentioned each day was the amount of people each day dying of hunger. The 25,000 a day die of hunger. This month, as we heard earlier at St. Matthew's, is Thanksgiving month. And part of the appeal that James told us about is the food bank. What a wonderful way that we as a church can do a little bit about that problem of hunger, of trying to show these people, the poor and the hungry, they are just as significant as those of us who have plenty to eat. Every human being is significant, made in God's image and loved by him. And we need to remember that in how we talk, how we act, how we shop, and we buy from dehumanizing sweatshops, and a myriad of other ways. How significant are human beings? They are massively significant, says the Bible. And we're going to be thinking particularly about that second point, God treating us as significant, as we sing our next song together. We're going to sing Amazing Grace, that sings of how we were saved by Jesus on the cross.